Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Christina here. I hope you are having the most amazing day ever. I am joined today by the beautiful Rose. She's over in the US. So hello from the other side of the planet. We're going to be talking about conversations with carnivores. So jump in, join the ride and join the conversation. And remember, like, subscribe and share with a friend if you're loving this information. All right. Hi Rose, welcome to the channel.
Hi, Christina. Thank you so much for having me.
You're
I'm from
very, very
Tacoma.
welcome.
I'm from Tacoma, Washington, the Northwest side of
Oh,
the US.
nice. Yep. I've been to the US once. I've been to Nashville. And so one of my secret little goals is that sometime in the future I can come over again and go to like KetoCon, because I see all these like people going to KetoCon and I'm like, oh my gosh, I definitely want to be over there for at least one of those.
Right on.
So for me, I found you on Instagram.
Mhm.
And that's probably one of my favorite places, I think, to actually hang out with other carnivores, because I love seeing other people's photos about what they're doing, get meal ideas, get inspiration. I think it's kind of one of the nicest places for some of the carnivores to hang out as well. And so I'm curious, when I looked through your feed, and I've been following you now for a little bit and seeing you pop up in your stories and all of that type of stuff, I'm curious what started you on that journey of making some dietary changes. Did you jump straight into carnivore or did you do some things before that?
Well, it was quite the journey, I have to say. I have been a dieter literally all my life with very limited success. And there was a 10-year span where I was obsessively counting my calories, but kind of keeping my weight in a certain range and running like 50 miles a week. It was just insane. And when I hit perimenopause, I just gained like 60, 70 pounds. And I thought that that was the way my life was supposed to be. And then right when I was getting ready to turn 50, I had to get out of the career that I was in because of depression, weight gain, and all that good stuff. And I had learned about the ketogenic diet in June of 2018. But it took me till December 2nd of 2018 before I tried to make any transitions. So I went hard. I was a hot mess. And it was for my mental wellness that I left my career. So I was on hiatus for about 3.5 years. And the ketogenic diet was great, but I was still being triggered. I didn't know a lot about food and sugar addiction. And so in 2020, I decided to try carnivore for a year, but I was still compulsively overeating and binging because I had days like holidays and birthdays that I would take off and just eat everything under the sun and then try to get back on the rail. And by August, I understood through a lot more education and stuff that I'm a unique being and there's certain things I can't eat. And then in 2021, I tried reintroducing like vegetables and nuts back into my diet, and I was still being triggered. So I just completely went straight up carnivore. So I dibbled and dabbled, but I'm a hardcore carnivore now. Yeah.
I love it. There was a couple of things in there that you mentioned that I really want to touch on, and one of which is like carb addiction. Because I think
Yes.
that people really underestimate how much sugar and carb addiction actually has an impact on us. So I'd love to hear your take on it and your thoughts and what your experience has been.
So carb addiction, it's a word that I just did. Addiction in and of itself was a word that I ran away from because addiction
Mm.
runs in my family. And for a period of time in my adult life, I was addicted to alcohol, but I was a weekend drinker. And so all of these phrases and terms, food and all that stuff, I just thought if I kept my calories in a certain, and it didn't matter if it was packaged or whatnot, it would be all good. But it wasn't until I turned 50 and started doing the hard work that was necessary. So what was your question again? I'm sorry, carb
So
addiction?
yeah, carb addiction. So let
Yes.
me put it this way, because like I
Mhm.
actually, couple of things. One of the things that you just mentioned then was like that term addiction, running away from it. And I
Yeah.
think that we have a lot of stigma attached to addiction. Like we think of like an alcoholic when we think of it. And so we go, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not this. And it's actually, there's more to it. And I don't think people really understand until they've been through something like this that they go, oh my God, This is super addictive. Like, I know for myself, like, I have been carnivore now for 7 months, but at Christmas time, I was like, "I'm having my pavlova. Like, I'm gonna have it," and I thought I would, like, make it, like, all as close to carnivore as I possibly could, but then
Right.
circumstances happened and I didn't have the facilities to make it. So I just
Okay.
bought the sugar-full, all the thing like, pavlova, and I had my piece, and I was like, "That's it. That's all I'm having. I'm done. I feel really good about it." But then the next day, I was like, all I could think about was like some type of what
Mhm.
else? Is there any of that pavlova left? Is
Yes.
there anything else
Yes.
left? What else is in this fridge that I
Yes.
could probably get? And like my brain was so fixated on it. And I actually
Mhm.
started to really understand even just a little bit of what like a drug addict might go through or an alcoholic might go through with those withdrawal symptoms. Cause I was like, I'm crawling out of my skin and I can't get my brain to stop thinking about this. And like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much of an actual addict I actually was.
Mhm.
And I think if we can destigmatize the word addict, we can actually give ourselves more compassion. And I think a lot of people struggle with this.
Well, with that being said, it's funny you should say that because now I truly, truly testify. I truly talk to people. I truly am on social media saying that my addiction is really my superpower. Because when you are looking for a drug of choice, whether it's heroin, whether it's fast food or that soda or coffee, whatever your drug of choice is, you will go to the ends of the earth to get it, including digging in an ashtray and maybe doing some unsavory things like digging, food that you swore off out of the garbage. I'm not to say that I have or haven't done it, but I can identify with all of it. And so, speaking of addiction, so I am a coffee drinker, a black coffee drinker, just like potfuls by the day. And I'm getting ready to transition into something in April. And I said, sometimes, like Christina, you and I probably have our palate so clean, we know what works for us, right? We know what works for us at this time, that we might forget or take it for granted that, and whatnot. So, with that being said, with coffee, I said, I'm going to challenge myself to remove coffee, black coffee, out of my queue every day. And for the last 2 or 3 days, I've been like, what did I commit to doing? But last year I did it for 43 days, right? This year I said, it's really an addiction and it's a very costly addiction, but it's a normal, it's acceptable. But what if I entered it this year with the thoughts of never returning to that substance, right? So I am no longer a coffee connoisseur. I am now becoming a tea connoisseur. So we'll see how that plays out, but I don't intend to go back. Addiction is the hardest thing. It doesn't matter what the substance is.
Yeah. And I think in some ways that food addictions are even harder to overcome because if you're an alcoholic, you can not go to the pub. You can avoid the places where that actually is fairly, well. If you're a drug addict, you can avoid the places where the drugs are. You can't avoid the supermarket or the
Right.
places where the food is. Like,
Yeah.
and so it's absolutely there in front of you. People around you are having it all of the time. Like, it's very, very hard to just abstain completely out of your field of reference. Like you basically have to go and be a hermit somewhere, get your food delivered in to be able to completely avoid it. And so I think that in that way, it's a little bit harder, but also it's really socially acceptable. Like,
Yes.
if you're a heroin addict, most people consider that not socially acceptable. But if you're a sugar
Mhm.
addict or you've got a sweet tooth, that's
Yeah.
socially acceptable.
Yeah.
And so there's some social acceptance around it as well, which kind of makes it a little bit harder to identify that this is a problem for me
Mhm.
and to abstain from it as well.
So, with that being said, you do have to go through trial and error, or I did go through trial and error to figure out what foods were appropriate for me, what foods did I obsess about, like the day after you ate that dish that you had. It takes a lot of work and
Mhm.
effort not to sink back into things, right? So, are you familiar with Quest bars?
Yes, we have them here.
So, I had Quest bars in my queue every now and again. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm a 1 meal a day girl. And I had bought a box of 4. There was no reason for me to pretend and eat one. I already knew in my calculator, I'm going to have 4 of these and I'm going to have my meat, whatever I'm going to have with it. But last September, I was like, oh, let me try some Quest bars. I'm going to tell you, I ate them on a Friday. My running group that I attend is on a Saturday. Immediately after I ate the bars and had my meal, I started having issues with vertigo, and I had never experienced vertigo. It was immediate, immediate. The next morning, I wasn't able to get into the car. It was like I was walking around the house drunk. I had to stay home until 3 o'clock. And even then, I needed to go out because I get kind of like claustrophobic. It was just a short distance. I wouldn't get on the freeway. So I had symptoms from eating those bars for a good 3 months after. So you have to experiment with what works. What worked for me 3 months prior to September, that was acceptable. But that one thing your body will tell you, and I listened. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Wow.
I haven't touched them since.
I wouldn't be
So,
touching them again either. Oh my gosh. But
well,
similar to that,
when we're carnivore, everything is just like pure and clean, and anything that goes in there that violates it, you will know right away. That's the thing.
yeah, exactly. I talk about it with my clients like this because some people will go, oh, it's made me allergic to everything. I'm like, no, no, no. You were already having issues with that. You just weren't aware of it. So it's kind of like if you are on a ski field and you were going down that ski field and you've come off your skis and you've tumbled off somewhere and you've broken your leg. If you are likely to be found in the next couple of hours, okay, great. But if you are likely to not be found in the next couple of hours, the recommendation is you go ahead and break your finger, because the pain of breaking your finger now creates 2 stimuli within your body so that you have less overall pain than you can manage to survive to be found. And so the nervous system gets confused the more pains there actually are. And so you overall have less pain. And it's the same with when we've got, the sugar that's triggering us, we've got the bread that's triggering us, we've got this that's triggering us. All those things are still happening. You're just not aware of it because your nervous system can't actually give you that information as frequently as you're actually experiencing it. So when you take it out, you're heightening your nervous system's response to you. It can give you that information really quickly
Yeah.
versus it's got to battle all of these other little pains that are going on to feed you that information. So it's not that you've become more allergic, it's that you've cleaned the highway and the messages are running super fast and you're getting them much faster than you ever were before.
Oh, thank you for presenting me with that, because I never would have thought about that in that regard. So that's really interesting, and I'll carry that with me for a while then. So
Yeah.
I am really curious, what made you transition all the way? I know this is about us having a conversation, but give me some 411 on that.
Yeah. So for me, I have been GAPS was the style of eating that I'd kind of been around most of the time, which is if you've learned about Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, she talks about gut and psychology syndrome and gut and physiology syndrome. What's happening in your gut affects your brain and affects your body. And so that had been my sphere of influence with education and what I'd been teaching my patients and all of that type of stuff for quite some time. But COVID did a big thing on me in the sense that I was so busy helping patients that I didn't really have time to cook. And, my family we have 7 kids. My husband was the cook and he's not very good. Like he could like burn water. And so we kind of ate whatever we could catch in that moment in time. And I'd be working, from early morning to like sundown. And it just was too much without putting in lots of good stuff to actually balance and support my own body through that. And so I got to the end of the bulk of the COVID season and I was like, my blood glucose was really high. I was feeling lousy. I wasn't sleeping. I'd gained more weight and I was just feeling crappy. And I knew the fastest way to resolve this is to go carnivore, which
Right.
is a part of the GAPS diet. Like there is a part of the GAPS diet, which is the no plant version of GAPS. And I'm like, well, okay, so it's just the no plant version of GAMS, but there's a little bit more you can have. You don't have to have everything boiled and put it into
Oh,
soups and things like that. You can, fry up a steak, and there's a little bit
okay.
more flexibility and freedom in it, which for me was the appeal, because I was like, I can manage that. My husband knows how to cook a steak. He can't boil
Well,
water, but he can cook a steak.
well, he knows. He's a man. He knows. Yeah, that's a
So
good
that was
thing.
the thing that really pushed me into it, is that my blood
Mhm,
glucose had gotten to the point where I was like, I either need to make a choice to
mhm.
go down the medicalized pathway and go on medication, because it was 21.1, which is our measurements are slightly different. So your HbA1 or your ABA1 would be similar to our molecule ones. So that was really high. So that was like 5 times what it should be. And I
Okay.
was like, I need to make the decision to
Yeah.
do something radical or go on medication. And every fiber in my being is like, if you go on medication, that is the worst possible thing. I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to prove to people that they can do this without medication. So that's essentially what I've done over the last 7 months. I've completely reversed diabetes and put my blood glucose back into normal range and all of that type of stuff. And so that was my instigator of starting. Weight loss
Oh,
is the positive benefit of that,
yes.
but it was the
Yeah.
health benefits that made me go, I need to make a decision, and I need to take my own health into my own
Oh,
hands.
I'm so proud of you, girl.
I
That's
am too.
awesome.
I started with that mission of
Yeah.
for myself, but also for others, so that
Okay.
I can show what's actually possible. And not
Mhm.
everybody has to pick my pathway of doing it. They might pick a combination of pathways, but I
Yeah.
want people to know you can do it without the
Mhm.
medical intervention, because it gets harder the more you add that stuff in.
So let me ask you, so like I went through 4 years of toggling back and forth and then having that experience. And it's just like, it's just easier for me to stay meat based in all categories, right? What about you? Do you ever think that you'll reintroduce foods that you once loved or vegetables or something like that?
I'm not really sure. Like, I always leave the idea of I have the right to change my mind at any time. If something stops
Mhm.
working, something else comes up, I have the right to change my mind at any time. But I think that coming back to that carb and that sugar addiction, I know, because I've played with the idea of, I could have a little bit of avocado, right? Wouldn't that would be nice? I love avocado. It's delicious. Like, I could have a little bit of avocado. And then I go, but that would be really nice with something else and something else and
Uh-huh.
something else.
The
And I followed the
pairings.
thought train, and I went, oh, that
Mhm.
is the slippery slope of
Mhm.
letting in one thing, is for me, that slippery slope of like, now everything's on the smorgasbord and it's like right there for me. And
Yeah.
that's for me, where at this point in time, it's so
Mhm.
much easier for me to not even think about those things, have them in my sphere of influence of the stuff that I eat, than
Uh-huh.
to go, I have to control, because I'm not
Oh,
good at the management system. Like, my
me
sister
either.
was the person who she like would get Easter eggs at
Uh-huh.
at Easter, and she would like
Uh-huh.
have one, and then almost by the time Easter came around the next year, she would have like a couple left over, and the rest of us were like, we've just like got to eat that until it's completely
Yeah.
gone. So she would tease the crap out of us by eating
Oh
just
my
this one
God.
thing in front of us. That's
Oh
not
my God.
me. That's not how I function. I am like, if the packet of Tim Tams are open, we eat the whole packet of Tim Tams. Like,
Right. Right. Who does one? Who does
I
one when
know.
there's 15 in the box? I'm taking the 15.
Exactly. So the
Yeah.
moderate control method
Mhm.
works for some people. They're brilliant at it.
Mhm.
I am not one of
Mhm.
those people. And I think that, like you touched on this as well, that it
Mhm.
came back to understanding your body, how you work, how your mind works. And I'm either all in or I'm all out.
Yeah, and for me, it was a lot of the cognitive dissonance or the mental chatter. It was just constant. I tell you, all of my waking hours while I was eating, I was thinking about what I was going to eat next. While I was going to bed, I was dreaming about what I was going to eat next. 2 and 3 breakfasts. It was just crazy. When I say it was crazy, it was really crazy. But I really didn't hear or understand that it was the food that it was the carbs, that it was the sugar, that it was the alcohol. I really didn't hear it and understand it until I had hit my rock bottom. And sometimes that's what it takes.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's something else, like, I got asked recently by somebody who follows me on Facebook that, "Don't I ever get bored of the restrictive eating?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, holy dooly, you really don't understand this." Like, I don't feel restricted in any way, shape, or form. So I'm curious, what is your take on that? Do you feel restricted?
You know what? There's a price for everything that we do in life. There's a price. I can have a smorgasbord of everything and be mentally unwell and physically unwell and emotionally unwell. Or I can live in freedom and know what foods work for me and be free of all of this other things going on. So I can apply all of that over here to creativity, visiting with my granddaughters, or whatever I want to do. So that is freedom. There's no restriction in knowing what works for you. Yeah.
I love that because I don't feel restricted at all. I feel like I've got the most food freedom I've actually ever had eating
Yes.
this way. Like, I don't have
Yeah.
to go, "Oh, I need to stop eating because that's too much or somebody else is looking," or, I can't have that big giant steak that I would really like to have. Like, I just eat
Yeah.
it and I'm full and I'm satisfied and then I'm not hungry. And all, like, it comes out of this space where I don't need to be thinking about food. And also, you probably find this only eating once a day, that there's so much time in a day
It,
when you are
it's
not
so
eating
much
all
easier.
day.
Hey, I want to ask you, have you ever eaten your meat with your fingers, with
Oh
your
my gosh,
hand?
yes. Yes.
So this is so embarrassing. For some reason, I had started picking up meat like a week ago with my fingers and just eating. And I'm like, who are you? Who are you? It was fun. Nobody knew. This is my first disclosure on that. But I was eating. I was like, I like this. I'm a carnivore. I can do this.
Yep, I love it. Like, let's just go full carnivore and just get
Yeah.
in.
Uh-huh.
I love it.
So,
So, I'm curious, for you, what health benefits have you
mhm,
seen with the changes? Like, we clearly you've lost weight, and we'd love to know how
yes.
much you have, but what else
Mhm.
have you seen?
So I was at 238.8 and I dropped down to 170. And then over the last couple of months, I have gained like 5 pounds because I lift weights and I no longer run just due to some knee issues and stuff. So I'm changing up my activity schedule. And who knows, I might be a power lifter in the future. I don't know. But so roughly about 65 to 70 pounds. And I've been weight stable since 2020, this time of 2020. And what was your other part of the question? I'm sorry.
That's all right. So what other health
Uh,
benefits have you seen?
Okay.
So weight was
So
one of them, but what
so
else for
wait,
you?
the mental clarity first and foremost. I don't wake up with a foggy brain. And just my numbers are really, really good. My like my blood work was really, really good. I had it done on December 30th. I went in to, have routine doctor visits, I think on the 9th or the 11th. My GYN proceeded to tell me that I needed fiber, I needed this, I needed that, yada, yada, yada. But my fasting insulin is 2.3. So that's excellent. My fasting glucose is like 80. And I think the only number that both of the doctors complained about was, I think, was it triglycerides that were supposed to be under 100, but they were 104. Everything else was top notch. And I'm like, it's time for me to find new wellness practitioners. I had to sit through a 10-minute conversation out of respect because she's a doctor, right? Out of respect, sitting there saying, uh-huh. But I'm like, you don't realize I've been coming to this clinic for 35 years, and this has been the best that I've been, right? You just want to look at the numbers or hear that I'm carnivore and act a fool up in here. But yeah, so so my labs look really great. My mental health, the weight loss and weight stabilization is really good. I have tons of more energy and I'm reversing. My age is reversing. So I'm 55.5 and I'm reversing. So I even feel as though I look 10 years younger than what I actually am feeling. So yeah. So there's just lots of zen and joy every day.
I
Yes.
love it. I feel like I'm aging in reverse as well. Like,
Mhm.
you know, there might be a few more wrinkles, but they're a bit cleaner than they were before. My
Right.
face is nowhere near as puffy as it was before.
Yes. Yes, the inflammation, you're right, the inflammation goes down. And do you ever eat like bratwurst or sausages or anything like that?
Occasionally. So some of the places, because we're traveling Australia, some of the places
Mhm.
we've been have got like actual traditional German butchers in there that are making them like the old fashioned way. And then I will give them a try because I'm like, come on, let me try the old fashioned way.
Right. So I was gonna say I love those to pieces, but I'm really a beef girl. But those are kind of like my treats. And I noticed that when I eat those, even though they're carnivore, even though they're good, I instantly gain like 5 pounds. And it takes a couple of days just because of the water or whatever's in them. So
Yeah.
I was curious if you noticed the same fluctuations, or
I don't
swelling or
have that
anything.
with those, but I definitely have it with chicken. So for me, chicken is that thing. Like I love good chicken wing and, chicken thighs, like my favorite. But I know if I'm eating chicken, I'm not losing weight tomorrow. Or I might be up a little bit tomorrow, especially if I've eaten it a couple of days in a row.
So you posted that you had some party wings and a side
Yeah.
of butter. I love that. But I was like, she eats like a bird.
See, it depends on what I've had the day before and what I'm having. And it was so funny because you're like, you eat like a bird, but I also got this message on my Facebook page. It's like, this is like disgusting. This is gluttony. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
What?
somebody's got an issue. Yeah.
Oh, can I share with you how much I actually eat?
Go for
I
it. Go for it. Because
Yeah,
people
so
ask me that all
every
the
day.
time. What do you eat and how much?
So I eat once a day and I eat so some people might identify better with the calories. So my calorie range on a daily basis with one meal is 3,000 to 3,500. Yes, at 55 years old. And I eat 4 to 8 eggs a day and about 2 to 3 pounds of meat in one sitting. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I looked at your party wings and I was like, she eats like a bird. Yeah. So
I
ground beef is
probably had
my
had my
favorite.
tomahawk steak the day before that. Like it balances itself out, I
It
figure. But
does.
it's interesting because I did some scrambled eggs with 6 eggs, and again, people were commenting on that, going, "Who eats 6 eggs in one sitting? This is terrible for you." And I'm like, "Who's telling you this garbage? Like some of the fittest, most buff men in history ate 10 to 36 eggs in a day, and you're complaining about
Exactly.
six? Maybe you might need a few more eggs so that you can build up your testosterone and get some balls there."
Oh, you are snarky girl. I love it.
I
Yes.
love it too.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm
They are a
curious.
gold mine.
Yeah, they are. I'm curious as well, like culturally. So I don't know if you ever played with Clubhouse or not, but I was on Clubhouse for a while there. And there is a big Black community on Clubhouse. And one of the things that I would find a lot when I walked into those rooms was they were telling everybody that if you are Black, you have to be vegan. Like that was what they were really telling people. And so I don't know if you've come across the Black Carnivore yet, or some of
Yes.
the other community
Yes.
ladies. And I'm like, you guys need to go listen to these ladies here.
Yeah.
Like they're thriving over here eating meat.
Oh my goodness. But not only that, I mean, I tried the vegan diet. I tried the couscous, the beans. Now, mind you, I grew up on beans, so I love beans and rice, but they're no longer loving me, right? So I tried the vegan pathway. I tried the fake meats. I tried all of that stuff, all of the processed stuff. And let me tell you, I was an angry Black woman, okay?
Oh my gosh, I
I
love
was
it.
angry. Do not give me another freaking salad unless it's all meat and it happens to have maybe some onions and avocado. That's a salad for me. But no, oh, I haven't come across Black vegans or anything like that, let alone Black carnivores, except for a day Fox.
Yep.
Um, Is that who you're referring to, the Black
Yeah,
carnivore?
yeah. So she was
Yeah.
actually probably one of the first, because like I knew carnivore from the GAPS perspective of the plant-free version of GAPS. Like that's what I knew it as. And I'd used it with patients because I've had some terminal cancer patients that, they asked me, well, what do we do? How do we get better? Because they'd been given a diagnosis that they had maybe 6 to 12 months to live and they had little children. And so they came to see me to go, how do I get the most out of the life that I have left? And I'm like, well, here's what I would do. And I would put them on GAPS, which would be broth, everything slow cooked, like slow cooked meat, slow cooked vegetables. But they kept getting gas. So we would just pull out the vegetables because of the gas. And then eventually, once we were plant free, there was no gas anymore and they were feeling good. And every so often, we'd try and bring back some vegetables and gas would explode. And then we got to the 6 month mark and she wasn't dead. And we got to the 12-month mark and she wasn't dead. And we got to the 24-month mark and she was spontaneously healed of cancer because, it
Nice.
magically just went away on its own. But it took her 3 years before she could get any plant matter back into her diet. But it meant for her, like that includes herbs and, some avocado and those types of things. But it meant for her, she was alive. Like her little boys were, 3, 6, and 9 at the time. So, she's now 10 years later been able to see some of them graduate high school, go to their, proms and all of those types of things. And that came from the plant-free version of GAP. So I knew it from that perspective, but I'd never really heard anyone talk about it like, say, carnivore, that term carnivore, until I met her on Clubhouse.
Okay.
And then I
Okay.
was like, oh, hang on, this is resonating with me. Like, and the
Mhm.
dots are starting to join. I know this works. I've seen this heal terminal cancer patients.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to give this a try. And really, do I love the vegetables? No, if it's a salad, it's the salad dressing that I like. Like, I've got to put lots of salad dressing to make this like palatable for me. And if
Right.
I go to a restaurant, I don't go, what vegetables am I going to eat? I go, what's the meat that I'm going to eat?
Mhm.
And then it's like, okay, what else are you going to put on that plate? Like, it's really about the meat for me there. So I'm like, why don't I just give to that? And
Yes.
that was the instigator of that. So she was a pivotal part of my journey of actually connecting the dots of carnivore, and expanding my thought process on that. But it was interesting to see how many people would come and challenge her. And I'm kind of curious whether you found people challenging you in your own community, and your own family and so on about you taking out plants.
So I get questioned about this all the time, Miss Christina, all the time. And to the point that it makes me not necessarily defensive, but it's like, "Ah, what don't you freaking understand?" But I've always been a person that brings my stuff to an outing. Does that make sense? Even when I was severely overweight and stuff, because I thought I was thinner than what I really was. So
Yep.
people are used to me being an outsider in that sense, taking care of my own food needs or whatever I was doing. But when I started intermittent fasting and cutting out things hardcore, I got questioned by my closest friends, and I just said it's not for us to have conversations about because I don't want to be angry with you and to repeatedly re explain myself. So that's not an avenue that we go down because I don't want to lose any friendships, right? Now on social media, it's a different thing. All I do is block. I'm like, I don't have a huge following anyway. So you don't mean that much to me anyway. So let me just block you because if I get triggered, I won't be setting an example for somebody who needs me to be an example, right? So yeah. So I just tend to avoid it and block if it's on social media. Yeah.
I love that approach that you said with your friend, though, that this is
Yeah.
not a conversation for us to have because I love our friendship and
Yeah.
I don't want to be angry. And I really like that. I think that's a really great approach. I've not thought about that. I don't think I've needed to go there for myself because, again, I've been in that space where people are used to me being weird. But I have a lot of people that, like, for them, social engagements and gatherings are a really important factor in their lives and they do it really frequently and they do it a lot. And I think that's a really good approach that they could start to bring to that. I know one of the other things that I'll often say to those people is remember the purpose of the meal is not to eat. Like the
Mhm.
purpose of the meal is to bring people to the table.
Yes.
And then you're developing your conversation and you're building your relationship. So focus on that. Like, don't make it about what's on the plate. Like, you put on your plate what you need to be on your plate, but then make it about being really curious about the other people on the table. And I often go and set this little personal challenge, which is, how much can I get them to talk about themselves where they're really excited and really happy that they forget to eat?
Yeah.
And so I set myself these little personal goals of like, remember, it's not about the food, it's about connecting. And connecting, like, the food is just the vehicle that got everybody to come and sit down, but it's the conversation and the relationship connection that we're really after and we're really wanting to develop. So focus on that, make that your priority versus the other.
So, it's funny that you even say that. So, since I've been on this part of my journey, when I go on outings with friends or family or whatnot, I just don't eat. The reason I don't eat is because first, I'm like, you're going to give me that little bit of food. Oh, this is not going to work. Right. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's just easier for me to eat what I already know that I have prepared at home. I'll be full, content, and satisfied. So I usually just have coffee or sparkling water. And I started a new career, and the team, we went out to lunch. This is back in September, and they kept saying, "Are you gonna eat? Are you gonna eat?" Because they were coming. I go, "I don't eat. I don't eat until 3 o'clock. All of my students know I don't eat till 3 o'clock. Miss Coates, what are you drinking? Water? Yes, I don't eat, right?" So they were so uncomfortable and asking, like, "Are you sure it's okay?" But now they're like, "Oh, she doesn't eat. 3 o'clock, she eats. So it's funny because I just choose, like you said, to really observe and talk to the people that I'm with and just enjoy their company and socializing. Because in the past, it would have been reversed. I would have been so consumed with, what am I going to eat next? Can I get like 6 of those? How many trips do I have to make? That I wouldn't have been involved in the conversation and appreciating the life around me. Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. I love that you everybody knows you eat at 3. And that you don't eat before that. I think that's a good thing to actually, for people to see as well, because we are so used to having so much food available to us all of the time that we don't have the natural famine and feasting that we would have had in nature. Like, we have feast, feast, feast versus the
Yeah.
famine. And so we have to consciously make the famine in the sense
Mhm.
of, what's going to work better for my body, when not to eat and when to eat. But we have to consciously make those decisions versus our environment now naturally making them for us.
Yeah.
And so it's good for people to see that too.
And it does take a little bit of discipline, right? It takes a little discipline, and it's like, do I want this or do I want that? And I always want that because I know what that will bring me. And so, how did you adjust when you were in social circles or even at work? Are you having any conflict there or issues there, goodies being brought in or
Not
offered to
not a
you?
lot.
Okay.
This is one of the things, because I'm on social media and I've put everything out there publicly. There's this stuff there for me. If I'm like, if they see me eating this stuff, like,
Uh,
that's not going to be good. So that kind of helps keep me a little bit of accountable and honest
mhm.
about what I'm doing. But the other element of that is, I really am trying to be proactive. So if I'm going to a birthday party, I'm going to make sure I'm full before I get there, so that whatever's on that plate, even if it is like my most favorite thing, which is pavlova, like, I could live without everything else, but like pavlova is the thing that calls to me.
Yeah.
And Kentucky Fried Chicken, that used to be the other thing that
Oh.
called to me as well. So, like, there's very specific things that I would go, oh, maybe, but now I'm like, yeah, whatever. If I'm full, if I'm in a state of fullness, then they have no appeal to me. They have no hold over me. They have nothing. And I think one of the things that you've been touching on quite a bit in this conversation is this or this. And I feel like adulthood is kind of really a game of would you rather. Like, would you rather have this and these consequences that follow it? Or would you rather have this and these consequences that follow it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when you know what those consequences are, right? And then that goes back down the road of addiction, that if you're choosing something and you know what the consequences will be, you have to address that on all levels or continue to be in denial. No.
Yeah.
Mm.
Exactly. And I think too, the other thing that I love about this way of eating is that it creates space to deal with the reason why you have those addictions. Like if
Mm.
you really lean into it and you've, for many of us, especially women in particular, men a bit, but I think women do it more than men do, are emotional eaters. That we eat our emotions, and the food that we're using in these addictive cycles are our ways of suppressing feeling our emotions. And when we take that away, we've got a choice. Do I go back to eating it and feeling crappy and lousy, or do I go, this is my time to face it? And this
Yes.
is my time to look at it and see that it's actually probably not as big and as scary as you may have made it out to be in your mind, because you're trying to not look at it. And I think carnivore, or anything that may be along those lines, if you allow it to be, can be the greatest
Mhm.
gift of emotional and personal development as well.
Speaking of that, so back in 2019, 2020, I was in a lot of darkness that I had to fight my way out of. And I said, I can go down this road, keep experimenting, keep trying to see what is actually going to work for me. But I have to tell you, my friend, the emotions that I had been suppressing with that sugar, with, those favorite foods for distraction to not feel my emotions, that was like the hardest thing. Even though intellectually I knew better, that I had sought help several times before, just all this good stuff. But until I actually felt it and refused to use food to suppress them and go through the emotions, it was the hardest thing, the hardest thing. Yeah. But I would still binge, right? I would still binge, but those binges got less and less and less. And I got healthier and healthier and healthier. And the light became lighter and lighter and lighter, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to try to pivot on some things. But those emotions, man, they still get me sometime.
Absolutely. Like even this week. So for me, I have been the current weight that I currently am today. I've been previously in my life, but I white knuckled that ride. Like I was like holding on tight and counting the calories. Like it was hard to get there. And I've been close to coming to this number for like couple of weeks, and I would
Okay.
get really close, like 200 grams close to it, and then I would pull back and I would do something that would be a little bit sabotagey. And so I
Mm-hmm.
had to ask myself, what am I sabotaging? What is the stuff that's coming up with this? And there was all these feelings about feeling safe within my own body, and touching back into memories where that came through. And the moment I really delved into it, I just went scooted past that number like no tomorrow. Like it
Isn't
wasn't
that
even a thing.
something? I know that's right. Good
But
for
I think it,
you.
thank you, thank you. I'm excited.
Mhm.
But I think that one of the things you touched on there was like you did some binge eating, like, but the stuff would become less and less and less. And I think that's where we need to give ourselves the grace of knowing that this is a journey. We're on the process, and that binge isn't a fail. That
Right.
binge is, I get to learn something from this, whether it is I create new strategies so that I don't have that available to me, or I go, well, why did I make that okay for myself to do? What was the story that was coming up that says this is just a little bit? What were the memories, the feelings, like all of that gets to be worked through. And if we drop it the first time we have a slip up,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's when we actually fail ourselves. When we don't
And
get back on the horse and go, okay, let's go again.
speaking of that, I could probably eat about 500 calories less than what I'm taking in. I could probably stabilize intuitively at 3,000 in one feast, but I choose to eat the 32 to 35 just to keep me stable, right? Does that make sense? Like a
Yeah.
full on a 10 plus instead of a 9.5,
Yeah.
because for me, that offsets the mind game, right? So it's worked for me for these few years. So I'm not going to change it unless something requires me to change it. But that's when you get to know yourself, like, your butter with your chicken, or eating a tomahawk steak the day before and you lighten up the next day naturally. We all have ebbs and flows, and whatever's going to keep me from going and being overindulgent like 3 times a week, but I can stabilize that, that's what I'm doing, right? So just know what your cues are, and kind of be graceful about it. Grace over drama.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the whole journey is about, giving to yourself nutritionally, emotionally, physically, and learning what those things are that you actually need and how to support yourself. Like, that's the thing, is figuring it out. Like, how do you support yourself through those things?
You mentioned you had 7 kids, girl.
I do. I do have
You
7
are
kids.
incredible. You
Ah,
are incredible. So can I tell you a real quick story? This is
go for
in
it.
real
Go for
time.
it.
So my daughter asked my husband to pick our granddaughters up from school today. And I told him, I said, well, I have a podcast interview. So please, take them to the library, take them to the park, whatever, come in at 4 or a little bit later. But then I would have to transition, make my food, which only takes me about 15 minutes, and eat. I like to eat in peace. So I'm imagining these 2 almost 7-year-olds coming and turning the house upside down, and the dog barking at me, and me trying to eat in peace, right? And he called and said, well, they don't need to be picked up from school. So, and I was like, thank God. Because I would have been like, oh my word. So how do you do it with 7 babies?
Well,
So
they're
weird.
half grown, so that helps. They're now
Okay.
what I call functionally helpful. So, when you've got little ones and they want to be really helpful, but they're not functional at actually doing it. Mine are now at the functional stage of like doing
Okay.
it. So my youngest is 9 and my eldest is 19. So right now I can hear them in the other room. They're washing up dishes and they're cleaning up the house because I told them that you need to clean it. And so they're
Nice.
functional and helpful now. So we all kind of get in there and do stuff as well. But it was busy, like when they were little. It was definitely
Yeah.
a busy time. But I've also been a pretty strict mom, which probably helps me in the carnivore journey because I'm like, no, you're all laying down and having a nap at this time of the day. So if you came to my house when my 4 little ones were little, at around, anywhere from like 1 to 3, it would be silent in my
Ooh,
house because everyone was like in nap time.
love it. Love
So,
it.
we create the things that we need to make life work for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just need peace, peace. And I decided, even if I have to adjust my own personal feeding schedule for the day, because I get grumpy around 3, 4, 5. And they're like, I know, Bea. They call me Bea because it's time for you to eat. So I used to try to have us eat together, and then, I'd be getting up constantly because somebody needed a silverware, somebody needs a drink, somebody needs this. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to eat before you guys or after, because I want to be of service to you while you're eating. It's so I just admire you. That's a house full and you still are doing your thing. I love it. I love it.
We learn to cope with the things that we actually have, and we adapt and we create strategies that work for us for sure. And I
Yeah.
love that you are prioritizing. I want to be of service to you while you're eating,
Yeah.
but I also really want to enjoy my meal.
Right. Right? It's amazing. And then if I ask my husband to step in, chip in, can you watch them? And I'll just go in another room. He's like, Rose. And I'm like, I might as well just be of assistance. Because my daughter's 35. So it's been a while since we had a tot in the house, right?
Yeah, yeah. They
Yeah.
forget how to do all the things, and um, I laugh at, like, even my husband, like they just I don't know if it's just men in general, but their version of like something being done is different to my version of the thing being done.
Exactly. Exactly. We're like all 4 corners ABC. And they're like,
Yeah,
whatever. We'll just do D.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
one of the other things that I'm curious about for you is if people have been coming to you and asking you, hey, I'm following your journey, I'm seeing what's happening. How do you do it? What are you doing? What's your secret? Are they asking you those questions?
So my secret is that I tell them is that you can't follow a diet. You can't follow a way of eating. You have to investigate it. We're all studies of one. So if you're looking for a food list or a shopping list, it doesn't work here, right? You have to do the work, right? Because as simplified, I eat the same foods. As simplified as my diet is now, it wasn't always that way. So if you jump in with both feet and declare that this is the way you're going to eat, that's great. But there might be some problems along the way if you're not willing to do the work along the way. So, just the basic information, just start lowering your carbs. If you can lower your carbs and start being mindful of your processed foods, you're way ahead of a lot of people. So that's where I always tell people, just start with where you're at. Don't do anything overnight, right? Because we want this way of life to stick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that
And
idea
transition
because,
slowly. Transition
yeah,
slowly. Yeah. Yeah.
I was a transition quickly person, but I'm all in or I'm all out. But there
I
are
feel you.
definitely people that need to take steps to actually get there to make it an actual thing for them. But the other thing that I think too, and I'm not sure if you're in the Facebook groups that are talking about carnivore and all of the type of stuff, where occasionally someone will pop in and go, "Why is this not working for me? I'm doing all the things," and I'm like, well, that's because you are exactly what Rose has just said there. You are an experiment of one, and everything, while this might be an umbrella, everything
Mhm.
needs to be tweaked for where you're at right now, where you've come from,
Um,
what your health complications are. If you've got a thyroid condition, an adrenal condition, you need to do slightly different things than if you don't have any of those things to start with. And, you know, it is all trial and error as what's going to work for you. So I really love how you language that. It's the study of one.
and then also what I've learned through education and then a lived experience is we want that scale to move. We want it to confirm that we're on the right road. But what's going on the inside, the body is concerned with keeping us alive the best way
Mm.
it can. And it's going to clean up what's going on the inside. Weight loss is not its primary goal. When everything works better on the inside, then weight loss will show up when it's ready. So if you fight it and restrict and do all these other things, you're going to end up at square one. So it's better to be patient at the beginning and let your body do what it needs to do to heal. Yeah.
Exactly. You've got to bring in the building blocks for it to be able to
Yeah.
rebuild the city.
Yeah.
So, sometimes that will mean you actually maybe gain weight for a little bit. And that's where, and I don't know how you go with these things. I always think it's important to track multiple different things, not just your weight, track like what's happening with your blood glucose, if that's an issue for you, your blood pressure. If you've got high blood pressure, let's track it and see what's changing and what's happening there. If you've got other things, like track your measurements as well, because, just like you were saying, you've gained a little bit of weight, but you've probably gained a bit of muscle too as well. And that weighs more than weight does, like than fat does. So, tracking these things. That I know for me, I had a whole month there where I didn't lose anything on the scales, but I lost like 5 centimeters. And, that for me was like, I'm gaining muscle. That's the feedback that me being able to track not just what's happening on the scales, but the actual physical measurements tells me I've gained muscle this month. And that's exactly what I want to do. It's going to burn more
Right
fat more
on.
quickly than anything else that I'm doing. So, all of that is helpful in being able to see movement forward in a positive direction.
And it's little bit by little bit, right? Little bit by little bit. And then the funniest thing, speaking of that, and maybe I want to say maybe about March of 2020, when I was telling you my weight finally stabilized, one evening, I'm going to tell you, I just could not get enough food. I was like, Rose, just go to bed, do this, do that. But something internally told me, you need to eat more, eat more, eat more. So I ended up eating like 3 meals that day. I don't know what it was. Then a day later, it was like that whoosh effect. I swear it went whoosh and my scale went down to 170 and stayed there. So I don't know if my body was trying to test me to see if I would give it food when it asked, even when it didn't need it. But I'm glad that I followed that because ever since then, it's just been hunky dory. Yeah.
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 I see that type of stuff happen all of the time, and that's where I think it's like we've got to like listen to our bodies. You know,
Mhm.
is this me craving something because I'm suppressing an emotion, or is it that it's actually asking me for something because it needs it? And that's a bit of an identification process, and that comes with getting to know your body and how it works and all of that type of stuff.
Mhm.
But once you've gotten attuned to it, it's done, and you're like, yeah, my body needs something extra right now,
Yeah.
so I'm going to give
Yeah.
it, and then you'll get the like the payoff and the benefits. I loved
Mhm.
what you said though as well about weight is like it's like the last thing on the list. Like I talk about the hierarchy of needs. Like your body's like, has can her heart pump? Are her lungs
Oh,
working? Is
yes.
the liver going? These things, these vital things for life, are they working? And that's what its focus is first. And the things that we tend to look at are the outside stuff.
Mhm. The
Has my skin
aesthetic.
cleared? Yeah. Is my
Mhm.
weight down? Is this looking good? And that's like the last on the list for that hierarchy of
Mhm.
needs.
Absolutely. So can I ask you, do you do any intermittent fasting?
I do, but I don't consciously do it in the sense of I'm not making a decision that I'm going to do it. So I do occasionally, I'll have a tracker where I'll just put on the tracker to remind me, like, when did I eat last? And then, I'll just
Okay.
let it go until I'm about to eat again. But when I fast out of the space of I'm so full, like I really don't need any more food. Like I really am not hungry. I couldn't even look at a steak and go, yes, I want to eat it because I'm like so
Right.
satisfied. Versus the, oh, I've got to hold on and not eat because I'm
Mhm.
really hungry and my body's asking for it. Like, for me, I fast out of the abundance of food versus
Okay.
the restricting myself and the lacking of it. But I find that most people naturally fall into when they've
Mhm.
given themselves at the beginning that I'm just going to eat and eat until I'm full, and if I'm not hungry, I'm not going to eat. And I'll wait until I am hungry to then eat again. That they naturally start to fall into some type of fasting. And that often will fall into maybe a 20-hour fast or even an 18-hour fast. And some days, I know that I've gone and done 38-hour fasts. And it's just because I'm not hungry, I'm busy, I'm really happy with what I'm doing right now. Food's not even like, what? Get out of my way. Like I'm doing
Right.
stuff, right? So
Right.
I find it naturally happens, um,
Okay.
versus having to force it to happen.
So you said 38 hours?
Oh, I've done a
30.
40-day fast before, which is
Girl,
just a water fast, but you know,
so let me tell you, the first time I tried to fast in 2018, I didn't know about the sugars and all that stuff. So I was just getting into my journey. It's like, I'm going to do a 28-hour fast. Girl, I nearly lost my mind. Okay. I was texting my daughter and my best friend. They were like, hold on, hold on. I'm like, oh, I'm not holding on. And then one time I did a 36-hour fast. I was done. I was done. For my emotional well-being and because of how I eat, I just prefer to do one meal a day. Maybe in the future I'll go longer than 24 or 28 hours, but I have to eat every day. I have to. Just for me, right? So I am so impressed with you doing all of that. Oh my word.
I'm curious. Like, how did you get to the OMAD, the one meal a day place? Like, was that a natural thing, or did you go, I'm going to try some stuff out? Like, how
No,
did you
I
get to
made a
that place?
conscious I made a conscious decision. It's like, do you want this or do you want that?
Mm.
So when I first started out, I was like being really gentle, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. And then I quickly went to 14. But the problem that I had with that, Miss Christina, is that I was still obsessing about food, even though I was trying to figure out the right foods and stuff. I was still having that mind game and that mind overwhelm. And because I'm pretty disciplined, except with food in the past, um, I said, okay, you're going to go ahead and do one meal a day. I mean, I did that almost immediately. I started maybe January 1st of 2019 because I couldn't handle the noise. I wasn't full enough. I wasn't full enough with one or two meals and then waiting for the third meal. right? So it's better to shut the noise down and just eat all your food at once. And that was a calming effect for me. So I did it right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But now I do teach and advise people to clean up what they're eating before they transition into intently trying intermittent fasting.
Mm.
Because the sugar is a demon. It can make you want to
Oh,
eat
it
when you
so
don't
is.
want to eat, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's where I will often provide people with multiple different fastings. So
Yes.
we might do a liquid fast where it's like you're having broth, you're having some coffee, you're having, stuff, but you're not actually eating for the day. Or
Yeah.
we might do a fat fast where all you're eating is fat for the day. Or we might do a sardine fast where all you're eating is sardines for the day.
Mhm.
And we do them for different reasons because there's, somebody who's got adrenal fatigue, for them, fasting can be really challenging, and can cause more adrenal stress for them. But if we give them a fat fast where they're only eating from that macro for the day, they're really nourishing and really feeding the adrenals, but they're actually getting the same benefits as if they were eating nothing as well. And so, depending on what's going on for them is what type of fast is going to work for you? What do you want to play with? What feels good for you? Let's have some experimentation. I think that that's the cool part of like doing this journey with people as well, is like, let's play. Let's get into the experimental land of like what's going to work well for your body. Let's test it out. What did your ketones do when we did this? What did your blood glucose do when we did this? What happened with your asthma? Oh, what? You didn't need your
Ooh,
Ventolin? That's really interesting. Maybe we should do some more of that. And
yes.
helping them discover these things about their own bodies in leading these experimentations is so much fun, I think.
Okay, okay. And plus the fat tastes so good.
I know, right? Like,
Yeah.
there are very few people
Mhm.
that have a big problem with doing the fat fast.
It's probably the preferred one, I'm sure.
Oh, for
Preferred one.
sure, for sure. So I'm curious, we're talking about working with people. You
Uh-huh.
take on clients, I presume?
So, yes, I do have a private coaching practice, but that's more of to say that I'm a coach. I mean, I have several certifications, so don't get me wrong. But that's kind of on hold because I want to build an online community, and that's coming forth on April the 1st. I've partnered with 3 people. I don't know if you believe in the universe, a higher power, or God, but people that I met virtually, and we are going hard. When I say going hard, we want to, support women, mostly women that need to make that transition. And we're all women that are over 50. So that really helps. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to do an online community to reach the masses versus the one-on-one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So somebody's listening to this. Is there a way,
Mhm.
like, can they jump on an email list? Can they just send you a message and say, hey, I'd be super interested in that when it's like ready in April 1? How would they get in contact with you? What's the best way?
Girl, let me tell you, I'm not trying to do no email list. Okay. So I have a website. It's Rose AJ Wellness. And then they can also reach me, Rose AJ Wellness, on Instagram. And then we can have a conversation from there and maybe schedule a 30-minute complimentary discovery call, whatever they want to do to get to know me better. But it's 4 practitioners, 4 people coming together and just putting our arms around a village of people that need to get better,
Yeah.
one step at a time. So it should be a fun journey, a fun journey. So they can always reach out on Instagram.
Yeah, awesome. So I know you also have a podcast, and if people are listening to this going, I want to know more, I want to watch or follow Rose's journey,
Mhm.
how do they find that?
So Rose AJ Wellness on YouTube for right now, on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then I'll sync those into podcasts at a future date. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. And that's the same thing that's kind of happening here. Right now they're on
Mhm.
YouTube. At some point they'll go into a podcast platform so people can just
Yes.
listen to them while they're driving. But you know,
Yeah.
we figure
Oh,
out the stuff as we go. We build it as we fly.
absolutely. You're my kind of girl. I knew it.
So
Yes.
to close today,
Mhm.
if you were to leave somebody watching this thinking, I would like to have a play with this, what would be 3 top tips that you would give them to start with?
The first and foremost tip is that no matter how many times you have not succeeded in transitioning into a new lifestyle, do not ever give up, because you never know if the next time that you try will be the actual time that you have the success that you want to have. Number 2 is you have to be patient, listen to your inner voice, no matter how screwed up it might be initially. There's a little voice inside that's trying to guide you. That voice is telling you what you probably knew as a younger version of yourself. So listen to that voice. Society, Instagram, Facebook, all these people that are around you, they don't know you better than you knowing you. And the third one is just have faith in everything that you do, because it is possible.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Thank
That's really
you.
great tips.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you so much, Rose. This has been so beautiful having this conversation with you. I'm looking forward to like having more conversations with you in the
Yes.
future.
Yes.
But thank you for coming into this space with me. I will get this organized and put it out there and let
Okay.
you know. And we will
Okay.
have some more conversations.
Thank you
Bye.
for having me. Bye. Mhm.